Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's BQE webinar. Your office is leaking money. How to identify losses and plug the holes. As you get settled, a few reminders before we get started. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen for any questions today, and remember to be constructive in any of those questions or comments to the presenter and to one another to ensure we have a session that is productive. You can also like a question to move it to the top of the queue. Today's session qualifies for one AIA Learning Unit, and AIA California will report this unit for those who complete the session live. And as always, the webinar content and additional resources will be made available online. To qualify for continuing education credit, AIA California provides the learning objectives for every webinar and includes them in the PDF presentation that can be made available online. Now to quickly introduce our presenter. Stephen Burns, FAIA, is an architect, technologist, and business strategist who works directly with architecture and engineering firm owners to help them rethink how they price, position, and grow their practices. With decades of experience in both practice and consulting, Stephen has helped over 1,400 firms transition from commodity pricing to value-based approaches, typically seeing 15 to 25% improvements in project margins within the first year. His approach combines proven business strategy with a deep understanding of how architecture firms operate, creating practical frameworks that work in the real world of RFPs, client relationships, and competitive markets. Now, on to today's presentation. Always great to see you, Steve, and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for that. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And full disclosure, everybody, there's a puppy that might make appearances in the background. So if what I'm saying to you today won't be captivating enough, getting a shot of Augie in the background might be enough to keep you looking at the screen here. And also, there's some squeaky toys down there that might make their own appearance. So I apologize in advance for that. But good morning, or maybe, yeah, I guess most everybody's on the West Coast. I guess it's now good afternoon. As some of you might know, like for the last 22 years, I kind of worked with companies, as Sarah mentioned, all different sizes. And as she said, I had the great privilege of working with over 1,400 firms. So I got to see behind the curtain of a lot of different kinds of businesses with different business models, but all in the AE space here. And as you can imagine, that means I've pretty much seen everything firms do to manage, or in most cases, I think it's more like mismanaging themselves. So I'm going to share with you some of the thoughts that I have, some of the lessons that I've learned, and maybe some of the tools that you should be using that will help you take control of your firm's finances. Now, I understand most people here were not trained in finance. We're all trained as architects, and dealing with money or maybe learning how to run a business, that was never really a high priority while we were in school. And I'll even suggest, there goes the squeaky toy, that it wasn't even on the curriculum for most of you to have any business classes. Most of us were kind of expected to learn about the business of architecture by working for a firm. Somehow, learning best practices for running a business, even what it means to have a business thinking mindset, they've been kicked down the road by our educational system. So most of us learn about business by working for firms that likewise never received a formal education on running a business. So there's very few small and certainly very few mid-sized firms that have these professional business managers, running the office. They're generally architecture or engineering professionals who sort of morphed into the role of management. So that's not how the vast majority of our industry runs, having it run by outside professional managers or people with an MBA. So to me, and I don't mean to accuse any of you of anything, but if you look at some of the AIA surveys, the reports about financials, it's really, to me, not surprising that many architecture firms aren't very profitable. Certainly, they're profitable, they're marginally profitable. And when I survey firm owners regarding their own profitability, a majority of them really complain that they're very unsatisfied with it. It's no surprise that most of you aren't earning what you believe you are worth. And it seems that most of us certainly in the architecture industry, console ourselves with, um, the passion that we have for architecture. We kind of fill the financial void with maybe the satisfaction that we're going to get from creating great architecture, or the awards that we might receive in our firm, as if the plaques and the awards that we get are any real substitution for the income that we are missing out on. And so that's the consolation prize that we get for the 60-hour weeks or the all-nighters, and those kind of scars that we all suffer trying to defend what we believe is the best design solution to solve our clients' problems. Now, for those of you who think it's actually more important to do great work than to have a great business, I'm here to tell you that you can have both. You, in fact, should have both. So today, what we're going to talk about are some of the things you should be doing within your firm so that your company is as well designed. Your company should be as elegant as the architecture and the engineering that you aspire to create for your own clients. So the first order of business is just to point out that any firm that is seeking profitability, it really must be using technology, certainly to manage um, your tasks, to automate things, to remove the negatives that are introduced, for example, when you work with spreadsheets. And again, now for over 3 decades now, it has become glaringly obvious to me that architects and engineers especially are really addicted to their spreadsheets. Maybe you don't see it as an addiction, but that's often the problem with such things. And for reasons I'm going to get into in a little bit later here, I do want to encourage you to examine your own internal processes and the technologies that are driving them, and compare those to the state-of-the-art systems that are out and available to us today. And you're going to understand one of the biggest leaks in your office, since that's the theme of today's webinar, it's just the knock-on effects of having obsolete or inefficient technologies. Now, for most of you, your addiction to your spreadsheets is going to be hard to break. A lot of you enjoy the incredible flexibility that working with these spreadsheets provides to us. Uh, the ability to change anything you want with ease. I'm really here to tell you that this unlimited flexibility is, in fact, really not something that you should desire. Now, I'm generally always in search of some kind of an architectural analog, so just consider this. So we all should understand how building and zoning codes, they provide us with this framework within which we will create our designs. And maybe it's often a dream for you to imagine what you could do if there were no building codes or zoning codes. But after decades myself of practicing architecture, I've learned to love the challenge of working within a defined set of rules. And the rules that we have certainly are physics and all these other variables, and they all come together and they create this framework in which we have to learn to be creative. So it's like having this smooth road to drive our car on rather than trying to like forge a unique path through this wild landscape every time we want to go somewhere. Not only is that road infinitely more efficient, but we know it's going to actually lead us to the destination. And at the same time, it's going to eliminate a lot of stress for us. So that's how I look at things like building and zoning codes, and how I also look at technology that has its own guardrails around it. So I just want us to all agree, if driving having you drive your firm down a well-designed highway will make the journey more pleasurable and more efficient for you. So the car, the navigation system, and that road I talked about, these are all technologies that impact the quality and the experience of your trip. And spreadsheets are just machetes. They do allow you to hack your way through that jungle. And I believe you all should be investing in the equivalent of like, electric autonomous driving vehicle for your firm. We are there today with our technology that's in which cost is almost a non-factor any longer, and it's there at our fingertips. But for reasons I think I'll kind of get in a little bit later, it's very hard for many of you to change that. So let's take this to a level I think you will agree with me on if you're kind of shaking your head at the stuff so far. Let's look at how technology has improved your ability to design and create your deliverables. I think it's inarguably true. If you simply drafted all of your projects by hand without the use of a computer, which is how I started my career, you would have infinite freedom. Things seemed great when you had that freedom, just drafting anything you want. But after finally handing your construction documents over to the general contractor, that is typically when we began to see how things are glaringly obvious, how flawed our documents could be, how easy it would be to have ambiguous information on different sheets. It required considerable human effort at our coordination of our drawings, at checking and rechecking, just to mitigate all these problems that we had with all this unlimited freedom. Basically, unlimited freedom means really no defined systems that we had to work within. So if there's anything we should have learned from the evolution of our CAD and our BIM software, it is that it has liberated us in our ability to design anything that we can imagine. And when you use it properly, it ensures that our buildings have less opportunity for errors. It improves the overall coordination of our work. It does that across all of our consultants. It reduces our risk, and it does also improve our efficiency. So the same holds true when you apply technology to the management of your firm and your projects. That is where we make and lose our money. That is where our leaks happen. It is totally liberating when you take drudge work away from an individual and you allow an unbiased system to evaluate the information that is being fed into it and just help you make decisions based on facts. This is now that we're living in the AI period. This is quite obvious. If you fed AI incorrect information as a part of the LLM, you're probably going to get some very unhappy results out of that. Now, I have personally, on my on-site visits to so many firms, I've witnessed these countless manually created reports and schedules. They're generally prepared by some type of management individual, and they might allege to calculate the profitability of their projects or define the overall project schedule. And when you compare these to what the facts say, when a project's being monitored through technology, it's a very different story. So it should come as no surprise to you that like the individual bias of a manager is going to alter the results of their own analysis. And studies have shown us that when the same set of raw data is provided to an individual who has a stake in a project, the result's going to be dramatically different than when some sort of disinterested person is asked to prepare the same report from the same set of data. It makes a lot of sense to me. If I'm asked to evaluate my own worth as a project manager, the projects I manage, I'm going to probably do my best to make myself look good. But if I'm asked to evaluate your worth, I really have nothing to gain by messing with the data. I'm going to let the data speak the truth. So in the end, everything in the world of accounting needs to be reconciled. So having spreadsheets tell you stories that conflict with a rigorous, let's just say, an accounting system, this is not what we want. If you want to hear facts, not fiction, everything that touches money in your firm must be reported directly out of a rigorous and a well-designed accounting system and not subject to any of your manipulation. I do wish I could take the profit and loss statement out of my accounting software and edit that in a spreadsheet so the numbers look the way I want. Some numbers tell the truth, other numbers lie. How are you ever to know the difference if you work in a spreadsheet? So the answer lies in removing human effort and manual manipulation. The answer lies in having the right technology more so than it does in any right individual. I'll remind you of a couple other problems with spreadsheets. If you have attended any of my other webinars in the past, I apologize because you've probably heard me stand on my soapbox about this. There are three primary problems that you get when you work or you manage your firm, regular management of your firm, by the way. There are always going to be these one-off scenarios you want to play with, and a spreadsheet's fine for that. But for the general operating system for your company, you don't want to be in that way. So the problems with the spreadsheets, they require people to manage them, and that means they're not doing something that is actually more valuable. It means they are inefficient. And I think we all should appreciate having our people be as efficient as possible. Secondly, they have a high probability of error. Anytime you ask someone to create a spreadsheet, you introduce error. It could be a calculated field doesn't maybe include all of the cells that it should. It might be an error in the calculation itself. It might be somebody entered a number into a cell and they transposed some of the characters. That's going to lead to a wrong result. When you're looking at a lot of data, it's going to be very hard to find where that occurred. Manual data entry is frightening to me. I just think it's asking for trouble. And finally, and I think this is no less important, those results that you get from all that work with your spreadsheets are not in real time. Most reports are manually created and distributed about 2 weeks too late for anybody to make any adjustments in their project or their business that's going to be meaningful. You're basically constantly just running around putting band-aids on your business. And I've repeated this one as well countless times. Just imagine if your car's fuel tank only calculated the amount of remaining fuel once every 2 weeks. How often do you think either you're going to end up on the side of the road stranded somewhere, or you're going to be overly cautious and stop constantly to top up your tank because you're not getting the data in real time? All of that lost time was totally unnecessary. It could have been just obviated by simply having the right technology. So maybe some of you are going to groan with this one, but please, you're going to have to accept that this is a webinar about finances. Once you have the right technology in your firm, the next thing I would focus on, certainly with any company that I work with, is I want to look at their chart of accounts. I'd want them to have the perfect chart of accounts. Okay. Now, I'm going to guess a small number of you have a interest or a deep understanding of accounting. Most of you might delegate all that accounting to a bookkeeper, maybe up a little bit to a CPA, and you're only going to be looking at certain reports. Maybe you look at the balance sheet and the profit and loss report. Maybe you'll look at your aged receivables. So maybe what I'm going to do is just to wake you all up because the puppy's sleeping next to me and not making an on-screen appearance behind me. Let's just launch a poll question here. So Sarah, if you can, I'm going to have 3 or 4 poll questions for you. This is the first one, so which is, there we go, perfect. Just try and respond to this as quickly as possible because we want to get through this. And I do actually have a lot of more interesting things to talk about here. Do you, the person attending, do you actively participate in the accounting system that's used in your firm? No, I just get, as I mentioned, reports like the balance sheet and the P&L, or I don't enter data, but I do review and I approve our payables and our payroll. I look at the balance sheet, the P&L, and the accounts receivables. Or I work with our accounting software directly and I have total competency with it. Or it's not my thing. I use my fingers when I do simple math. So, Sarah, I can't quite see how the results are coming in, but when you sense people have slowed down, I'd appreciate it if you could just like share the results so we can all see what today's group, how they respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's starting to slow up just a little bit now, so I can go ahead and end the poll here and share the results.
Okay. So what's nice is most of you have some level of competency. So it's almost like 40% of you are the top 2, and I can't say this, maybe like 10% or less have total competency. So good to know. Thank you for sharing that. We'll just close that. I'm going to just move on to my next thing. Now, I'm going to stay on the chart of accounts here. I apologize, but I think it's really fun and to share this with you. So when you look at your chart of accounts, you should be primarily focused on segments 4,000 and 5,000 or 40,000 and 50,000 if you're a big firm. These are the categories that directly link to the profit and loss. They show you your areas of weakness. It's going to look at every dollar you earn and all of those direct costs that you incur to earn that revenue. The first three sections in the chart of accounts, that's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, they're just going to link to your balance sheet. And the balance sheet is simply a snapshot of your firm's overall health at a moment in time. It tracks, looks at your assets, your liabilities, and your equity. It's like looking at your wallet and seeing what's in there, but it doesn't provide you with any insight as to how whatever you got in that wallet got there, right? It's just there. So what we are interested in today is your profit and loss. That's where you have the potential to understand more about where you make your money and what it costs you to earn it. The P&L looks at a range of time. It could be, like this year, last month, last quarter, and it gives you the ability to compare periods just to better understand the trends. So then when we have webinars where I'll talk about KPIs, the key performance indicators, those are just numbers. What you want to see is how do numbers change over time. So that's why I'm really very fond of running your P&L where you're comparing it to a prior period, prior quarter, if that's what you're looking at, prior year, if that's what you're looking at. So the real trick to the chart of accounts is how to set it up so that you don't just know if you are making a profit, which many of you will do is look at the bottom line. We're profitable, all is well, okay? So not just look at if you're making the profit and how much it is, but who or what is responsible for the profit. And similarly, if you are losing money, it's going to be able to tell you, if it's set up properly, who or what is responsible for that loss. Knowing that kind of information means you finally have an understanding of where the problems lie and what you need to fix or what you need to exploit. If all you look at is the bottom line, you walk away with a good or a bad feeling, but you don't know what's causing you to have that good or bad feeling. You have to dig into the underlying numbers. You have to have them tell you a story that will lead you to some insights about your business. So this slide's intended to show you how you can go about setting up a chart of accounts to be much more robust than what I think 99% of you have today. I'm also going to give my good friend, who's also another business coach, Douglas Teager, a shout out for this because he really helped me in the development of what we call the perfect chart of accounts. So you notice on the left side how we've set up our service revenue accounts, and you set them up in a granular fashion. Most of you just have professional fees and everything just gets dumped in. Every time someone sends you money, it goes into your professional fees for most of you. And across from them, I have these corresponding 5,000 accounts. Those are the cost of services categories. So when you track a profit center, you also want to track the corresponding expenses that are associated with that particular profit center. Now, as a fun example, if you wanted to see, and this is a real scenario that I've had with a company, if you want to see if that large format printer in your office is a profit center, you would show under your revenue, call it 4,300 here, for project-related reimbursables, and you call it out in a sub-account. I have it listed here as 4,365. So all of the income that the prints that it creates are being charged to your client for the production of those prints, they're being recorded here as income. And if across from that, you're going to simply have 5,365. That's the place where you are tracking all of the expenses that are associated with operating that printer and that printer alone. So it's the maintenance cost and the paper that you have to feed it and the ink that it is consuming. Maybe there's some other costs I don't know that might be related to it. Maybe you've got some tracking software on it that's separate. But all of those costs that are associated with the item, the profit center that's generating you revenue, that's how you track that. And now you finally have the ability to understand, as we found out in this firm, that your printer is highly profitable. And it'll inform you about the return on that investment. So maybe you spend $10,000 on that massive printer. And based on having a well-designed chart of accounts, you're going to learn that in 4 months, you made all that money back. And now it was simply operating as a cash cow for you. True story. So this is actually a concept I want you to apply to everything in your firm. I truly believe every single dollar that you spend in your business should be considered some type of an investment. And when you properly organize the chart of accounts, you're going to learn the truth as to which of those investments are bringing you returns. Financial reports have a purpose, but I don't think it's what you think. If you read them properly, you can hear the story they tell you about your firm. Most people just look at the bottom line and they tell themselves the story that they think is happening instead of really reading each word and understanding the context. I will tell all of you right now, you probably should take all of those reports that you get and dump them into a AI chat tool, I can't say names of anything, and just ask it to tell you the story about your firm. And you might learn things. And the more robust, and it'll do it in a narrative way, and the more robust or granular that chart of accounts is, you will see that the story that it is telling you is far more consequential to you. So, Sarah, we got our second poll question right now, which is simple question. This is a multi-select question. So I want to know if you understand the profit centers, like that one I just told you, profit center was a printing machine, right? Do you know the various profit centers of your firm? Do you review the profit and loss for the firm regularly? I think most of you do. Do you review the profit and loss for every one of your individual projects regularly? Project A's P&L, Project B's P&L. Do you review the P&L for every one of your employees? You're probably going, what is he talking about? Or we review the P&L for our various project types. Or we review the profit and loss for our various contract types. These are all various different kinds of P&Ls that one could look at. And Sarah, again, when you notice them slowing down, let's just go ahead and share these results.
Sure. There's still quite a few coming in, so I'll give it another couple seconds. And we'll go ahead and close that.
So of course, I can't tell the percentage numbers of what you're giving me, but it looks like 60%, it's almost 70% review the P&L for the firm. A little bit more of you are actually looking at it at the project level, which is actually impressive for me to see that. I usually have that low. And then the other ones about understanding which one of our employees is profitable or which one of the kinds of project types we work on. Oh, we're doing hospitality or single family residential or multi-unit housing or whatever kinds of project types you take on, understanding which ones are profitable or not. Or even our contract types, understanding, do we make more or less profit when we're working in an hourly contract versus a fixed fee? So I'm going to close that and we'll just move on. So there are kind of two levels of accounting I think that your firm should be utilizing. So we were just talking about the chart of accounts, which is really part of your business accounting system. But you should also have a project accounting system. And it seems like a good number of you, in fact, more of you responded yes to it than you did to the business. So maybe we have more people who are not firm owners as much as project managers. But you need to have a project accounting system. These two items, they can be part of a single system or they can be two separate systems. But the beauty of any system is they need to be fully integrated. You don't want to be working with two disconnected systems. So whether it is a single system or two systems that are integrated, that is far better than working with those spreadsheets. Now, the beauty of implementing project accounting for your firm is it's kind of like the I used to say it was the Hubble telescope. Now it's the Webb telescope for your office. You're going to see things that will change your understanding of your place in the business cosmos that we call our firm. One of the most beautiful revelations that project accounting delivers is it really does identify every profit center for your firm. You're going to learn about the principals or the partners in your firm and which ones are bringing in the projects that add to the bottom line. You're going to learn about the true skills of the project managers and find out which ones are running projects that bring you a profit and which ones are draining your fees. This is insight that will allow you to change how you treat a project manager and instead start to recognize they're actually, in fact, business managers. That's because every single project, when you have this, is actually its own little business. Now that you've got project accounting, you can run it with a profit and loss statement, and uh, and so that's why they're like the CEO instead of a project manager. They're like the CEO of their own little business right there. That means, as a CEO, they are now truly accountable to the performance of that business or performance of that project. You're going to learn about the profitability as it relates to those contract types. So you might learn that billing hourly for your services might be marginally profitable, but there is a limit to that profit. It's that built-in margin between your cost rates and your bill rates. And for projects where you have established fixed fee contracts, either for the entire project or maybe just for certain phases, that's where I generally will start with a company if they haven't done it before, you're going to be able to improve your efficiencies and not just pass that on to your client as less hours spent on their project and having to make it up elsewhere, but you're going to actually reap the rewards of your benefit by investing in making your firm more efficient. And you're going to make more money than you will ever see from billing hourly. You're going to learn about the truth about how your fees are earned during every phase of the project. And that's going to lead you to think about how you do your proposals, so that you stop starving your firm during early design stages where you probably spend way more time than you really can bill for. And then you have this hope of making a profit by the time the project reaches the finish line. You should assume that any project, it could be terminated at any moment in time, and you should be profitable along every step of that way. You're going to find out which types of projects that you engage in are most lucrative for your firm. And that's going to lead you to make different decisions as to how you're going to market your services. And you might also find out that some of the most enjoyable projects, they're not nearly as profitable as other kinds of projects. And there's reasons behind that. I'm not going to get into that today. That can lead you not only to changes in your marketing, but also in your hiring. You're going to learn the truth about every one of your employees, who makes you money and how much. We're going to look at that a little bit later. Who is costing you more than they are worth. You will finally have a rock solid system that can tell you if the employee should earn a bonus and the amount of that bonus. And that's going to be based on quantitative data. And just like having this granular breakdown in your chart of accounts, when you have this granular breakdown in the activities that your employees are selecting on their time card, you're going to find out which activities that you perform for your clients bring you the greatest profit margins. So imagine finding out what would happen if you learned, as I did with one of my clients, that when you prepare these artistic renderings, which most of us do today through technology, that it is the most profitable activity that you do in your firm, much more profitable than the preparation of contract documents. How might that change how you charge for your services, how you prepare your contract documents, even what services you provide at all? And by the way, last you're going to find out which of your clients are your most profitable. You're going to learn about which clients drain your firm. And are you one of those firms that has this favorite repeat client? Maybe they stuck by your side since the day you first put up your shingle. I can almost guarantee that that is the very same client that has the lowest profit margin. And how do I know that? Because I've seen it countless times. Yeah, I do know client loyalty is extremely valuable. But do you want, let's say, 30% of your firm's resources and 30% of your billing linked to a client that keeps you busy, but not as profitable as the 70%? And I'm not saying you fire the client. I'm saying that a well designed project accounting system is going to open your eyes and just give you a moment to pause and think about your contracts and your priorities uh, and your team. When your firm implements a proper project accounting system, you're going to get all the benefits I just described to you. And I just want you to see what that looks like in practice. So here I'm looking at the performance of one of the projects, the Pasadena Elementary School. What's happening here is something that cannot happen when you use a spreadsheet. I don't care how sophisticated your spreadsheets are. This is a dashboard reporting in real time what is happening with regard to the financials at the project level. And as things are changing behind the scenes, like time and expense records are flowing into the system from the employee who's out on the construction site and tracking a travel expense, or if somebody's sitting at their desk on their phone and marking their time card as, the 2.5 hours they just spent doing something, or a client just received an invoice from the system or paid the invoice from the system into the system. These numbers are updating right before your eyes. So on the graph, I can see right now the earned value. We monitor this typically on a month-to-month basis. How are we progressing? What are our costs? How do they compare to what we have invoiced? And how do they compare to our plan, our project plan, what are our expectations? I can also monitor our profitability or drill down into each of the respective phases, and I can monitor it there. And it appears like, we've got a 40% profit, in a particular phase. And maybe that's because that phase has a fixed fee, and we've billed $136,000 more than if we simply build them on an hourly basis. This is one of the greatest benefits of moving your fees from hourly to fixed fees. This type of analysis, it needs to be available to you 24/7, at least available to your project managers. When you give them this power, that is, once again, when you elevate them from being just a mere project manager to what I believe is a much more desirable role of a business manager. This project, again, is really its own little business. And if your managers are given these kinds of tools that allow them to control the project every step of the way and ensure it's going to be profitable, then you're going to see that all of your projects are going to roll up and make your firm much more profitable. So, in short, your firm is leaking money when it takes time and resources to create these kinds of insights, because, again, there's an intrinsic cost to preparing this information. And when the lost money from not being able to see the problems in real time is compounding the problem, because you can't fix them until another 2 weeks, and it's too late. The water's under the bridge. There's also this other cost: is the employees being taxed with preparing these kinds of reports. They're just not doing the high value work that really does contribute to your bottom line, and is in fact what they love doing much more, and frankly what your clients are really hiring you for. By the way, if you cannot rely on managers to glance at their project performance dashboards because they're just such an inconvenience for them, you can always have the system generate reports that look at any of the data that you want them to see and present it to them in a fashion that they find valuable and informative. So here I've called up a gross margin report, and we can look at, for example, all of the projects that one individual is managing and see what are our costs, how much have we invoiced, what is our profit or loss, and you can see that at every single phase of the project. And while I have been complaining about all the manual effort that's required to create a spreadsheet, you quickly might, once you're in these technologies, find that you don't even want to waste time having to have your, run a report. So instead, what are you going to do? Exploit the benefits that are provided by state-of-the-art technologies and have the report prepared for you automatically by the system on a schedule that makes sense for you, the recipient. So if I know this is a report that is something I tend to like to want to receive on Friday afternoons at 3 p.m., I can schedule this to happen. So the system will prepare for me and it will send me an email with the report attached. So why have this report prepared for me by some other individuals working over the weekend, and they leave it for me on a Monday morning? When I arrive to work, I got to put out all these fires, and I don't get a chance to actually slow down and think about things until Friday afternoon. And by then, the report's 4 or 5 days old, maybe even 7 days old, right? So data needs to be in real time. So we just looked at a project performance, which is probably the place to go when you need to understand project economics. And the same concept holds true for those other income silos in your firm that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, projects drive our revenue, but our employees are really driving our projects. So this is an example where I'm looking at the performance dashboard for one of our employees, Jan. And I have set the date parameter just to get an understanding of how did she perform for our company for the, over a particular period, this year, year to date, last year, whatever it is. Notice how I can instantly see something which is called the effective bill rate. So that's giving me a picture as to what every hour of that employee's time ended up being worth based on all the revenue that was derived from her effort. She actually brought us $176 an hour. I can see the system has calculated for us what her minimum bill rate should be. That's where the system brings you the business intelligence that allows you to make better decisions. The system instantly understands what is her utilization rate, what is her realization rate. It knows your firm's profit expectations, and ours is set to be 20% profit as the baseline. So I'm going to expect a 20% profit from Jan. So whenever she's billing on an hourly basis, her hourly rate should be $148 an hour at the bottom. And it's also interesting, we can see the system's taking all of that information and suggesting what is her ideal pay rate. So this is not a piece of information most firms will ever want to share with their employees, but the system is able to determine this for you. It's based on how have they performed and what do we expect to get as a profit margin. The system understands what our overhead multiplier is, and it's suggesting to us that if we paid her $62 an hour, and that's about $130,000 a year, that would be the appropriate rate for her performance to our firm. Not that you have to do that. I'm just telling you the system is suggesting that. And notice she provided us with an 18% profit margin during this particular period. So if we spent $267,000 to employ her at our firm during that year, it's the year period that we're looking at here, and her efforts brought us $326,000 and something. Unless your firm is using a system like this, I would challenge every one of you to tell me how much revenue each employee brought the firm during any time period, because this is where another feature in sophisticated accounting systems comes into play. It's business intelligence. Business intelligence is giving me information that I would otherwise not be able to figure out. And then it just leaves it to me to make the decision as to what am I going to do with that particular information. So certainly Jan is going to get a nice bonus. I think I can provide her with a raise, maybe no less than 3%. I might just even invest in her more. Maybe she can use better computer or some other kinds of perks. Maybe I'll promote her so that she can have more time to help share her skills, her techniques with other staff members. And what I probably don't want to do is take all of the excess profit that she might be generating for the firm and blindly sink that into salaries and overhead or bonuses for non-performing staff. I could visit the dashboard for each of those employees, or better yet, I can just call up one of those reports that I talked about a moment ago, which you can schedule for you so you don't have to go run them. And by the way, if you're looking into the details here, this report is run for a different time period. But the point is, this report will show me the stats on every employee I want to know about right now. And I could look deeper into my low performers. I figure out what is the source of their problem. Is it that they are working on poorly managed projects and they're not responsible for that? Are they working on projects that have insufficient fee for all of the effort that was required? And maybe the finger needs to be pointed at the partner in charge who established that contract. Maybe they're not well trained. So the list goes on and on of what could be causing the issue. The number in itself shouldn't determine your decision. You got to still dig a little bit more. But having a system that can tell me the truth about my projects and my employees and their activities and the project types and our clients, even our vendors, I finally have the tools at my disposal to fix the leaks. I'm going to talk about one of the more seemingly mundane reports that every one of you should be paying attention. That's your accounts receivables aging report. It's a very simple tool to help you stop losing money. Your AR, your accounts receivables, is potentially nefarious because if you are bad on your collections, you're going to find yourself not only out of money, but you're going to be borrowing money, which has a significant cost associated with it. So ensuring that your clients pay you on time is really important. I can tell you, I've learned that most firms don't even charge their clients for their late invoices. They are afraid to do this, and they act like they're just simply grateful that their client has paid them anything. Or they might feel uncomfortable doing that because their client might have provided them with a retainer, which they're just simply holding on to until the end of the project, as if that is earning them interest anywhere close to what it is costing them to allow their clients to delay paying their bills. When you allow your client to pay you late, you're giving them something more than just an interest-free loan. You're giving them a loan and you're paying the interest on their behalf. And that's certainly going to occur if you're borrowing money from a line of credit to carry you through the cash flow crisis caused by a deadbeat client. Please certainly have a clause in your contracts that discusses the terms of your invoices and the charges that will be incurred if they are late. Don't ever allow a client to abuse this. It is respectful, or it's actually disrespectful of your firm's services, and it generally will become a habit from your client. I don't know anybody who delays paying the invoice of their attorney, but there is a mile-long list of people who conveniently forget to pay their architect on time. I'm running a little long here. I apologize. But using software that is monitoring the aging of your receivables and giving you a platform to manage your collections is really important. Great systems like this are going to notify you when your invoices are in jeopardy. They provide you the tools so you can communicate with your clients and you can keep a record of those discussions. Very often you'll have a client on a call with you and they'll claim, I don't have a copy of that invoice. I never received it, or I'm traveling and I don't have a copy with me right now. So the system's going to allow you to instantly email any open invoice to your client so they can have it in front of them right during that phone call. And of course, the system will also allow you to take a payment from your client right there on that call, or they can click the link and pay it themselves. So this is where modern technology makes running your firm so much easier. This is why I'm encouraging every one of you today, as you research systems to implement in your firms, please make sure you are investing in modern technology that takes advantage of all the changes that are associated with electronic invoicing and payments. The world of having a client tell you the check is in the mail, that's long since past us. Your system should allow them to pay you via ACH or credit card if you wish. You can even have the system automatically charge your client a processing fee if they're using a credit card, or you can share that processing charge with them if you'd like to set the rules up at the project level. One other advantage to moving into a system that has all these features is when you take advantage of electronic invoicing and payments, you eliminate much work from your overhead staff. There is no manual accounting needing to be done here. The systems are automated to record the payments, they mark the invoices as paid, they auto reconcile. So basically, you have your accounting done without touching the system. And in addition, the days of waiting for checks to arrive in the mail and then you take them to a bank to deposit them, those are out. Those are totally over. The days of waiting days before the money finally appears in your account, that should be behind us. Don't put your firm's cash flow at risk by running your firm like it's like 2015. And the last thing I should add, most of your clients are going to absolutely enjoy the ability to pay you electronically because it's going to simplify their lives. Your system should give them the ability to determine the date of their payment so they can receive an invoice from you today. And it may not be due for 30 days if that's your terms, but they can take care of paying it today while it's at top of mind and have comfort in knowing that the funds won't move into your account from their account until the day that it is due. And now got 9 minutes left here. I just want to introduce a term some of you may not be familiar with. It's really cost optimization. And my personal philosophy is every dollar you spend should have the potential to return a profit to you. That's what I talked about. Every dollar is an investment. So once that money's out the door, it is gone. So if you think about that firm with the large format printer, they spend $10,000. It's been put to work earning money every single day. When you hire an employee, you know you are going to spend a lot of money, but you also have an expectation that that employee is going to enable you to make more money than had you not hired them. Otherwise, why hire them? So even if it's an overhead employee, like your office administrator, something like that, having them in the firm means you can be more highly utilized or optimized. You are most likely more valuable to your client providing the services they hired you for, and certainly you were trained to do, than have you spending your time doing administrative work, which you're probably not even well equipped for. So to set the stage, let's just return to the chart of accounts. I'm just going to discuss the non-project related expenses. Anything attributed to a project is what we discussed earlier as cost of services. That's what went into the 5,000s, right? In that chart of accounts. However, your firm will have a large amount of expenses that just don't work in service of your projects. Big ticket items, certainly things like your rent, which is, office expense, facilities, whatever, insurance, indirect labor, payroll. By the way, your technical employees will be contributing both to 5,000 and to 6,000. Okay, because some of their work is directly related to projects, other things, paid time off, office meetings, those are going to be 6,000. So not every hour of their day is going to be utilized or linked to something that's bringing you revenue. And that's where these kinds of systems come super handy because it is recognizing that time from that time card is going to the right place in the chart of accounts. And there's lots of other expenses that you're going to incur. I just want to go over 3 of them real quickly. First, you all understand that every dollar saved on an expense is a dollar for profit, or at least a dollar that you can do something maybe more valuable with. So let's talk about your rent. I think the past 5 years now have proven to everyone that now maybe is the time to discuss the pros and cons of your physical office. Maybe it's necessary. Maybe it can be optimized to become more efficient. Maybe you found some of your employees can work remotely for full or part-time. So if your firm is spending, let's say, $10,000 a month on your rent, and you can work with half the space, you've just saved $60,000 a year. And what could you do with the $60,000 that can provide you a better return on investment? Maybe you can hire more staff or pay higher salaries, which are going to attract more skilled employees. So the list goes on. I'm also going to mention insurance policies. A large percentage of your gross revenue goes to pay the premiums for all the various kinds of insurance that your firm needs. I would recommend you shop your policies at least every 2 years. You're going to save thousands of dollars in most cases and tens of thousands for some of you by going through the annoying but beneficial exercise of repricing, bidding your insurance. If your firm has a strong relationship with an agent, unless she is like your sister-in-law, please shop it out. Make sure you're getting the best policies, that you're getting favorable rates. You're also going to learn about the insurance landscape, which is something that's also constantly changing. So I don't have enough time to get into all this. I'm going to just move by these. I was going to talk about marketing. I was going to talk about office expenses. So we got a quick poll question before we wrap this up, and hopefully we can stay on a little longer, Sarah, for questions. But I want to know, does your firm create a financial budget? This is not about your projects, okay? This is about your firm. And you could say, no, we pay our bills, we send out our invoices, everything just seems to work. Or yes, we actually do create an annual budget and we review it at year's end, or we create the budget and we review it quarterly, or you might create that budget and actually review it monthly. So, Sarah, let's see if we can just 30 seconds at most to this and then find out about the group, because I want to talk about your firm's financial budgeting potential.
Sure, we'll just get a few more responses here. A couple are trickling in. We'll give it a few more seconds. And awesome, a little bit jumping. I'll go ahead and close the poll now.
Okay. Most of you, almost half of you, not quite, just pay your bills, create your invoices, things seem to work. And then most of you, then the next biggest group are those of you who review it on a quarterly basis, and the smaller amount reviews it monthly. But let's speak to most of you right now who are not doing financial budgeting. So let me just close that. Take a look at what's on the next slide here. So the reason I'm asking about financial budgeting is that I personally believe it's one of the great lost opportunities for firms. So about 40% of you are missing out on it. Just like you have a plan for your project, and by that I mean you know how to go about designing and documenting the project so that eventually a builder will take over, follow the plan to construct what you have designed. Well, you need a plan for your firm. Where and what is that plan? And I've done webinars before on business plans and strategic plans. That's certainly a place to start. But financial budgets are like the details. They're the schedules, the specifications that will enable all those written plans to actually become manifest. And when you use proper accounting software, that process can become actually effortless, since the system can analyze past periods and display what has your firm actually been doing during that period. What have you been earning? And you see that on the screenshot here. But just as important, how have you been spending all that hard-earned money? You're going to be able to convert that into a future budget. And you can look at it on an annual, a quarterly, or a monthly basis. And now you can have a picture about timing. Maybe 1 or 2 months a year, you're going to have some very large expenses like those insurance premiums. It would be nice to know when that is coming up and ensure that you're going to have the funds available. It's like when taxes are due, right? Or you're going to find out that you've been spending a tremendous amount of money for IT support and server maintenance. And maybe you'll find that moving your firm into the cloud is going to have a cost to it, but it's going to be overall reduction in the total spend that you have on your IT. But anyway, with this, your firm will have the tools to plan your future and measure your profit and loss against each month or quarter, as most of you are doing. And when the actuals are not living up to your expectations or whatever that financial budget plan was, you will now know in real time, and you can now make some intelligent decisions about what to do in the upcoming months or quarters. Smart decisions come about by using smart technology. In your car, your navigation software is finding alternative routes for you when the traffic becomes a problem. This is the tool that you will use to find the most efficient route for your firm to get to the destination, to reach the goals that are in your strategic plan there. So before I move to Q&A, hopefully we're like 4 seconds left, but hopefully we can stay on. I just have to share some slides here, but I actually going to have to pass through this. I can't do that right now, but these are just some bits of information. I wish I can go through a little faster, move on, get rid of the dashboards here because we've looked at them earlier. I do want to point out, If your firm doesn't have access to this 24/7, you are a decade behind the times. So please, when there's leaking going on in your firm, look at the technology to help you solve that problem. And the last thing I just want to mention right now is because I'm grateful to our friends at BQE Software who invited me to speak a fountain of information to you with nonstop words flowing out of here. I'm sorry about that. Just want to say, if you don't already know about you can go ahead and launch that fourth poll question right now, Sarah. If you don't know about BQE software, I would encourage you, please get a demo. This is state-of-the-art technology that I think every firm, no matter how satisfied they are with their own systems or their status quo, take a few minutes, get a demo to see what's going on in state-of-the-art technologies for business and project management, and decide, is this going to be the right fit? Ask the hard questions, do the same thing of any other competitor that they have over at BQE Software that you might be interested in, then find the right fit for your firm. But if you have not looked at this kind of technology in the past year or two, I encourage you, please revisit it. The world of technology is moving super, super fast, and you want to be investing in technologies that are keeping pace with that. So with that, Sarah, if you want to stick on, I'm around for questions if we can handle it.
Yeah, we can stay for a couple more minutes and answer some questions if we have them in the Q&A.
And that's my cue. So we do have one question teed up. If folks do have additional questions, there's a Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen, so feel free to lodge them there. But Amanda was wondering, for residential renovation projects, which fee structure tends to be more profitable and lower risk? Fixed fee or time and materials? And there's a follow-up question to that.
Yeah, renovation projects are interesting in that they typically will have unknown uh, things associated with them. With a ground up construction, it's very easy to quickly go boom right to a fixed fee. But when you're dealing with existing conditions, some things are unknown, and that could, as we all know from general contractors, that could bite us in the butt if we our assumptions about what's behind a wall or what are the conditions underground aren't actually what's real. So I tend to like, and that's one of the things, by the way, that certainly BQE Core is able to do, is you can have different contract types for every phase of your work. So I like taking this phases of a project for which we have less control, more moving parts, make those hourly, minimize that until we can define the scope and have a better understanding. So you might take the pre-design phase or even schematic design phase if you need to, and do that on an hourly basis. But once you can get a defined scope of work and an approved budget, and hopefully you're working with a general contractor early on in these kinds of projects to have fewer and fewer questions about the condition of the building, try to lock that fee in. Certainly areas like design development and to a greater extent even construction documents in which the client has very little communication with you, you can knock that out as efficiently as possible. That's why I want you to invest in training your staff, not on just these kinds of tools, but on your CAD and BIM tools so that you can be more productive and reap the benefits of that and not just charge hourly, which is you work really hard at taking your staff, moving them away from projects so that they can learn more about their tools. And the only beneficiary of that improvement is your client who's getting billed less by you. What you want to do is invest in your staff and your technology so that you reap those benefits. So short answer is just find the phases that are unknowns and make those hourly. Fixed phases, make those fixed.
Great. You answered the follow-up question, so you're a step ahead, as always, Steve. Teresa had one. What is a healthy overall utilization rate for firms?
That's a really funny question because it's what you do with your staff when they're not utilized that makes a big difference. So if you've got a technical employee who you think every minute of their day should be spent just cranking out drawings, right? You're probably living in 2020, okay? That employee should be elevating their what they bring to a project from something that today we know other tools can't. So those could be things they bring not just to your project, not just to the project, but to the firm. So a project manager, you could see them at 60, 70%, right? No one's at 100% because everybody's got paid time off, and you do have some other office events that need to be accommodated. So, somebody's going to be in their low 90s. but it's not a rule of thumb that you should have for your firm or for an individual. I think what's more important is when people are not being utilized, which means working directly for the to drive revenue for a project. What are they doing to improve your business? Certainly, they're going to be doing things for themselves, like paid time off. But when they're not working on pay, not having paid time off, and they're not doing project work, doing something that will ultimately be invested in the company. So there's no good answer for that. You can see various ones. I know BQE has a wonderful, what's it called, the benchmark report that you produce, Austin, that
Benchmark.
gives you
Yep.
great information, which is probably the best survey I've seen because it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's not a survey asking firms to fill out like we get from the AIA and other management consultancies out there. It's using actual data from their systems, unmodified data. So it's real raw information about firms' profitability and utilization rates and so forth.
Great. We have one final question. This is from anonymous attendee. How much are you seeing the markup on sub-consultant fees playing a role in firm profitability? It seems like clients are pushing back on this.
I know Anonymous, by the way, great architect. So some firms will have a 10 or 20% markup on all billable expenses across the board. And I can't say that you should or shouldn't do something, but it sounds like Anonymous's firm is getting pushback from clients who probably would say, wow, that's a significant chunk of money. Why don't I just contract directly with them or just have them invoice me? So yeah, it's going to take it away from your bottom line because that's sort of free money. It's sort of like any markup on a billable expense is generally intended to pay for the oversight of those expenses. So we have bookkeepers and people like that behind the office who are not getting compensated for all their time to make the machine run. So that's going to help. But I frankly think your firm should be quite profitable if you're developing your fees properly. And my next quarter's webinar is also addressing this one, and last quarter's webinar talked about that as well. For your services, this is why your clients hired you. That should be where the bulk of that revenue is coming from, not from these expenses that are flowing through in which you're just trying to pay for the cost of managing those expenses.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's it on questions. I don't know if we lost Sarah or not.
We lost everybody.
No, we're still here. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Thank you much to Stephen for your great presentation, and thank you to Austin for helping go through those questions. If you've made it this far, AI California will submit you for credit. You'll be receiving some follow-up information on how that credit will be reported and how you can also receive a certificate from today. Thank you so much for everyone for being here. Thank you to BQE, and we'll see you at their next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care all. Thank you.